tremendous global effort is going into the drive to develop a coronavirus vaccine. And meeting the overwhelming demand will require a historic amount of coordination by scientists and drug makers, as well as governments. What are the biggest challenges in making and scaling up a vaccine? What will ensure it is both effective and safe? And with the American president striking out on his own, will the global endeavor be slowed without the support or participation of the U.S. government? To discuss these issues and more, I'm joined by Dr. Mohammed Munir, virologist at Lancaster University, Mario Cavallo, founder and CEO of M Communications Group, and Dr. Hua-Chun Zhu, associate professor at the University of Hong Kong. That is our topic. This is Dialogue. I'm Zhu Yue. Well, let me start with you, Dr. Munir. And scientists around the world estimated that the best case scenario is that we will have a vaccine probably in the next 12 to 18 months. Some say we might have an emergency use vaccine by September. Some say we will have wide-scale vaccines available the beginning of next year. What do you make of this timeline, Mr. Munir?
Yes, I think if we really look on to the availability of the technologies, this time the speed has been unprecedented, mainly because China has provided the genetic information very quickly. So as we stand now, more than 8 vaccines are in clinical trials and over 100 are in preclinical stages. So if everything go as planned, at least 2 vaccines are reaching close to end of the phase 2 trial. That means a vaccine is possible at the end of this year. But certainly there are other challenges that include scaling up and distribution. But the potential is that we will have a vaccine at the end of this year.
But we're not sure that will definitely happen. What are the factors that are at play?
Well, certainly this is not a done deal. Vaccine has to be first generated. Secondly, it has to be rigorously tested, and it should have a proven efficacy with no side effects and would have capabilities to be scaled up. So until all these factors are not met, it is certainly a question. However, given our experience with such technologies and the viruses of similar kind, likelihood is that the vaccine would become available. But certainly the challenges lies around the infrastructure availability, global efforts, and what are the major stakeholders are really taking the efforts in a concrete way that drive the whole perspective into the direction that is certainly required. So there are challenges, but the hope is still there that we will have a vaccine.
And as you mentioned, the WHO has actually listed 8 candidate vaccines already in clinical trials. Then there are more than 100 candidates being now in preclinical trials. Do we really have so many candidates? Why can't we narrow it down to just 1 or 2?
Well, part of the problem is that based on our previous experiences, around 90% of these vaccines would fail at one stage or other. So therefore, it is, I think, a good idea to start with as many possible candidates as are available based on different technologies and different approaches, and we will see which vaccine would work best. And even if one of the vaccine would become available, I don't think that would meet the demand of the globe as we stand now. So we certainly need more than 1 vaccines. Those would meet the same standards of efficacy with no side effects and would have a possibility to scale it up. So starting with this number is not a bad idea, but certainly the scale of narrowing them down would start to trickle in as they progress with the clinical studies. Those are weak in inducing the responses would be peter out very quickly.
And Dr. Zhu, we understand that these different vaccines are not only vary in numbers, but also in the way that they were made. Some were RNA vaccines, some are DNA. What do you make of this varieties of methods?
Okay, so I think that the availability of the different kinds of vaccines so far first depends on the capacity and the experience of the different companies or institutes. So for example, in China, currently we have 3 inactivated vaccines. So in the previous history, I think there are several companies, they have very excellent experience in mixing up the inactivated vaccine, and usually developing the inactivated vaccine is faster. So this is why many companies in China, they try to develop the inactivated vaccine. And
so
then
so inactivated vaccine is basically a virus that is inactivated. Is that it?
Yes, the whole virus become inactivated by using some reagents, chemical reagents, or some other kind of methods to make them not infectious anymore to the human beings. That is one approach. And then we also have the adenovirus-based vaccine. So we know that this kind of vaccine, they are relatively safer, but we are not very sure whether this kind of virus, they can induce enough antibody titers or not. So, like for example, in the USA, there are two companies. They are trying to produce the mRNA vaccine. So this kind of technology is not very well established so far in China. But in USA, these two companies, they have good facilities and experience, so they choose this kind of strategy. And I know that in UK, they also have an adenovirus-based vaccine. So we know that different vaccines, they have their disadvantage and also their advantage. But because the novel coronavirus, this kind of COVID-19, this disease, it is completely novel. We don't have any previous experience, and unfortunately, so far, we don't have a good vaccine for any kind of coronavirus. So we have to try to make our best to explore the possible ways. And in the future, we also need to test whether they are really safe enough, the efficacy or the effectiveness, and also whether the vaccine will induce some kind of, we call it ADE, the antibody-dependent effect, whether this kind of side effects will exist or not. So it is safer for us at this moment try the possible ways based on our previous experience and capacity. Yeah.
And Dr. Munir, as Dr. Zhu just mentioned, it seems that we've been trying different methods. Is it the first time or among the very few occasions that human beings have been trying so many different approaches to tackle a new virus because of the urgency of the problem?
Yes, well, these technologies have evolved over the years. For example, mRNA vaccine is not that old, like last 20 years they've been trying to put that into the market. Vectored vaccine, which include like the Oxford University and my vaccine, we all using the vectored vaccine. Those are relatively new as well, but have a proven track record. For example, the last Ebola vaccine that was approved from FDA is a vectored vaccine. But then we have other approaches which are very crude and old approaches like inactivated vaccines. So these vaccines approaches and the platform have been evolving over the years, but there hasn't been any situation when all of these are needed to really put into the same boat to try if any of that would work or not. So this is unprecedented situation, first because of the urgency, and secondly because we don't really have a good vaccine. We never had a vaccine for coronavirus before because the SARS went out of the world quite quickly. So those vaccines, those were developed, those were not tested and not tested at the scale they need to be approved. So all these technologies need to be tested to see which one works out the best.
We've been following news cycles on the vaccine very closely. The recent news is PicoVac. That's a vaccine made by a Beijing-based Sinovac biotech. It has just been proven effective in monkeys. And also, there are two already in the clinical trial of human beings. So, Dr. Zhu, does that mean we are very close to having the final product?
Okay, so I would say that for this Pico vaccine, actually they have already get through the preclinical stage in the animal model, especially in the non-human primate model. So that is a very good job. because we have already tested this kind of vaccine in an animal model that is most closely related to our human beings before we really put it into the human subject. And with this kind of very promising result, we know that at least in the monkey, it is safe and it's effective, and also it can produce enough antibody to protect the animal against the virus infection. So with this kind of result, we will feel more confident to inject it into the human volunteers, so that we will know that whether this result will have the similar consequence in the human subject or not.
Although monkey is very close to our Homo sapiens, but we cannot say for sure that those vaccines working on monkeys can also be working the same way on humans. Can we, Dr. Zhu?
No, we cannot say it for sure. Because actually, monkey they have different characteristics compared with human beings. And also, based on my previous knowledge, I know that monkey usually they will secrete a lot of saliva and some secretions in their respiratory tract. So this kind of secretion can help to capture the viruses. And in that case, usually monkey tends to have a milder symptom or signs of infection compared with the human beings. So I have to say that currently the monkey model, they can have some signs of infection, but not that severe with some of our human patients. So what happens in the monkey can be a good indication, but it cannot serve exactly to the human beings. So this is why we need the clinical trial for different ages, stages. So, for example, we need to recruit small number of the volunteers to put them into the clinical trial stage 1, so that we can evaluate safety, and then recruit more people for evaluating the effectiveness during the second and the third stage. So that is the routine protocol for the preclinical and clinical trials.
And there is a practical question I want to ask you, Dr. Zhu, because we know there are fewer and fewer COVID patients here in China and also in Hong Kong. How can they make clinical trials on humans if there is not enough numbers of COVID patients?
Okay, so I would say that during the stage 1, it's okay. You can just recruit a healthy candidate to see and to observe whether the candidate vaccine is safe enough or not. But during the second and the third stages, you have to first looking at the antibody level it can induce, and also when the antibody can be produced. But the problem is that if you are not living in the academic center or region, then you will have no chance to expose yourself to the virus itself. But I would say that because so far or currently we can see that outside China, there's still many countries that are suffering from the outbreak, big outbreak of the COVID-19. So we can still collaborate with the different countries. We can provide the vaccine strain or candidate so that we can went through the medical approval or ethical approval and also the restrictions, so that we can try to have some collaborative projects together with other countries that suffer from this disease.
So Dr. Munir, you agree that some kind of a collaboration, international collaboration, are necessary for the trial of the vaccine?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, in this situation, no one country can claim that they have the infrastructure enough or the technologies enough to really claim that they would be able to make a vaccine that would be dispensable for the whole world. Certainly collaboration not only at the regional, international and the global scale is required, but also pooling of the resources, which SAPI and the World Health Organization have been always claiming to do so, is absolutely important to ensure that we have resources, we have capabilities, and we have infrastructure enough to scale it up once the vaccine would become available.
All right, let's take a look at what being talked about on the vaccine development on the internet. We have gathered some of the opinions and also statements from the internet, the social media users. They've been talking about vaccine use. I'm skeptical of the timeline. This Tej Daliwa said that the vaccine development of SARS-CoV-2 is an RNA-based virus with higher mutation rates than DNA viruses. Researchers are trying to target more invariant areas, but testing, sequencing, and resistance present extreme challenges. This person seems to be well versed in the development of vaccines. So Dr. Munir, as he just mentioned, this is an RNA-based virus. Is it for RNA-based virus to mutate faster than a DNA virus? And that means a vaccine developed on the prototype might not work if that virus mutated in nature.
Yeah, well, that is certainly true that the DNA viruses mutate relatively less compared to RNA viruses. And majority of the RNA viruses, they mutate because that is a part of their natural replication cycle. For example, when we talk about HIV, we talk about Ebola, we talk about influenza, all they mutate very effectively. And one of the plus side with the coronavirus is that although it is an RNA virus, but it has an enzyme that can check if there is any spelling mistake into the genetic makeup of this virus. So therefore, the overall mutation rate in the coronavirus, which is RNA, is relatively less than other RNA viruses such as HIV or influenza.
Okay.
So if we look onto the more than 8,000 sequences available so far since the start of this outbreak, there has been certainly mutation in different regions of the virus that has led to categorization in different strains. And some strains are more prominent in some regions, others are more globally spread. But the question is for the vaccine. For vaccine, we don't need to look onto the whole virus itself. We need to look more into the areas those are important for the vaccine protection, and one of that is the spike protein onto the surface of the virus. So if there is no mutation at a significant position within this spike protein, the rest of the mutations are meaningless when it comes to the vaccine.
And so far, the spike protein, that's where it got its name, coronavirus, has not mutated that much, you mean?
If we look onto all the data that has become available, there is no significant changes at the important site within the spike protein that could lead to a vaccine that required, like, for example, a different vaccine for the same strain, or the same strain required different approaches. No, the same vaccine would still have a capability to protect against all available strains identified so far.
At least so far. And Dr. Drew, have clinical trial samples probably in lab quantities is one thing, but it is totally another thing to have large quantities of vaccines available at people's doorsteps and producing and distributing them to hundreds of millions of people. That is also another problem of another dimension. Are we ready for that?
Okay. Based on the data and information that have been available on the website, we can find out that at least in China, those several companies, they are very huge companies supported by the government and also by some collaborators from the university and institutes. So I think that, for example, there are one company in Wuhan and two in Beijing. They've already said that their production capacity is around 10 million.
10 million?
Per year. Yeah, 10 million doses per year in one of their companies. So I think that is their current capacity if they are in full run. That means usually for the production of vaccine products, they have to have 10 months in 1 year try to producing in full capacity. So that is around 10 million to even it can be scaling up to 100 million, I think, according to one of the CEO who is responsible for this kind of production. But I think because China is a very huge country and the government has a lot of right or power to recruit people or recruit the resources to help with some big projects. So I think that if we are really determined to do something that we want to do, recruiting all these capable person and also the resources, material, I think that we should be able to conquer this kind of problem. So the material, resources, storage would not be a very, very big problem. The only thing is that we need to have a really good candidate, vaccine candidate. Yeah.
But it's not just in China. It's for the whole world, Dr. Munir. Because even if we have the capability of producing hundreds of millions of doses a year, that's still asking the question, who should get the vaccine first and in what way? Who should do the coordination work? Where is the responsibility lies?
I think this is really a big race, and the capability and the scaling up would require an effective technology to be approved. And I think that would be one of the criteria for any vaccines to be proven in the beginning, whether it is having a potential to scale it up at the level that is required. And there would be some nasty things happening. For example, if you look on to today morning statement from CEO of Sanofi, they said that if vaccine would become available, it would be first utilized in America because America was the biggest funder for that, although it's a French company. So there has been quite a lot of debates whether who own the right and
who makes
will
the
get
rule?
first.
Who decides the priority list?
We don't really have an international police to monitor these kind of legislation, but World Health Organization would have a say, but that is not really something that they can enforce. It is down to the manufacturer. They would decide whether the funder would get the highest priority or the one that is in high need would get the highest priority. But that is really something that would be very nasty, especially in this situation when like many joint vaccine producers, they are joined together. For example, Sanofi and GSK, they are working now together before they were rival. So they will be lobbying to see which country would get the first, and that would be one of the things need to be watched very closely.
All right, let's take a look at what the social media users have been saying about the development of the vaccine and the difficulties we might run into. This social media users been saying, come on, it's a race, but cooperation is a win-win. After all, it's something we all need, so there can be a monopoly. Now we have Mario Cavolo on the line. Mario, it's a win. It is supposed to be a win-win cooperation, but obviously reality says a different thing, because President Trump just said COVID-19 is going to go away without a vaccine. The same situation did with the development of SARS vaccines total back in 2003. And some say America will probably go it alone because it didn't attend an international conference on vaccine development. Will we be able to cooperate?
In terms of whether or not we're going to start seeing better international cooperation coming from the United States, based on the type of messaging and rhetoric that we're getting from President Trump, it doesn't seem that way. We certainly are going to continue encouraging it. Everyone is going to continue encouraging it. In fact, it was French President Macron recently, as you just noted, the G20 meeting for vaccine development, all the countries coming together, and Macron himself saying, well, one of the things we hope that this G20 meeting will help make happen is to more peacefully and with less division bring China and United States to the table, everyone working together. And we are seeing clearly President Trump is making that very difficult for
Because
variety of
that is
reasons.
in line with his America First policy. But why this kind of thinking is not appropriate for a problem like COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, why this type of thinking isn't appropriate has frustrated me from the very beginning. It's why I wrote that very first article, you know. So why should we be taking a divisive approach? And in the case of the political situation in the United States, I don't actually point the finger as much as others do at President Trump, because he was a result of 20 years of decline and deterioration in the political system in the United States. That's really the situation. And so when he came along on his populist message. The problem is that his populist message, after he got elected, he did the same thing all previous presidents do. He then sold out to the billionaires. He sold out to Wall Street after saying he was going to drain the swamp. So America First becomes the billionaire bailouts first. That was their excuse. This virus created their excuse to once again bail out the billionaires. So it's America First, bail out the billionaires first.
It's a pandemic that is hitting America hard. America has the highest number of cases and the highest fatality rate. It seems President Trump has a good reason to first let the vaccine be used in America.
Well, he definitely wants the vaccine to be used first in America. At the same time, it seems though he's a bit more mired in the political situation, because it's America first and the billionaires first and the November election first. We'd really like it to be the virus and saving people's lives first. Let me note, we said this in the last show, Zoe. China never talked about the politics or the economics. They went straight to just saying, we're locking this country down. We informed the world on January 23rd. We're saving lives. It was the first priority. There was no discussion of politics and economics. Well, now we're moving forward into the vaccine development side. We're still seeing more politics. We don't want to see that. With Operation Warp Speed, I think you're going to ask me about that. There's been developments, and it looks like it can head in the right direction. And this is where the American companies can step up to the plate and move the situation in the right direction, to bring everybody together and help people. This is what we need right now, the focus on the humanitarian problem, which is enormous.
Well, but there are divergent opinions on how the vaccine should be used. There are some developing countries say, well, those vaccines should be free, no patent use fees, because it is for humanitarian use, as you said. But on the other hand, those pharmaceutical companies say, we have spent a huge amount of money. It's going to be business. What do you say?
I say no to this idea that we need to be nice to the pharmaceutical companies. The idea is clear. The fact is clear. The United States political and economic system is a system that benefits Wall Street, the pharma complex, the healthcare and hospital complex, the military complex, the bankers, the billionaires. The pharmaceutical companies have billions of dollars. There are people who are dying. They shouldn't be getting charged $900 a month for medicine when they can barely even pay their bills, and they can't even, they can't even afford their monthly bills. So the healthcare system is corrupt. I'm sorry, it is. The pricing shows how corrupt it is. I don't support any of what any of those ideas at all. Oh, we need to be nice to the pharmaceutical companies.
And another thing is that...
No, not at all. They have billions.
Another thing is that the WHO has been saying nobody is safe until everybody is safe. So you cannot protect America until the world is safe from this virus.
Well, that's absolutely right. Nobody's safe until everyone is safe. And at the same time, I'm looking at notes here from what needs to happen in terms of moving forward. Look at, for example, I want to be positive about the situation with America.
So that causes
me to
Mario,
point out
out of time.
Amcham China.
Thank you very much. You've been watching Dialogue here on CGTN. I'm sorry we can't have more time. And that will do it. I'm doing Beijing. Goodbye for now.